I am incredibly excited about this next panel about chefs advocating to change our food systems, which is something they do in their kitchens every day. Please join me in welcoming Chef Eric Gephart, Director of Culinary Inspiration for Kamado Joe, to the stage. Round of applause, people. Keep this energy up. Hey, Chef Eric, nice to see you, man. Next, we are joined by Chef Adrian Lipscombe, the founder of the 40 Acres Project, a nonprofit that highlights Black food culture in food and farming, and a member of the American Culinary Corps. Woo! And we have Chef Dave White, who is based in Florida and the author of Salted, a recipe book with a story to tell. Please give him a round of applause, please. All right, as they get settled, I want to thank Chef Dave for being able to give us these books, which we'll give away in a moment. So a copy of Salted can be yours. If you turn to the front page of your program, there's a QR code, which you can scan to become a Food Tank member. The first 5 people who do that will get a copy of the book. So I'll just watch you very intently until you do it and become Food Tank members.
I'm just stealing one.
You can have it.
I'm just going to take it.
I'm fine with that. You get whatever you want, Adrian. So thank you all so much for being here. This is like one of my favorite parts of the day because I get to talk to all of you. So I'm going to start with you, Dave, because you've done something really extraordinary with this and told your own story. So I want you to talk a little bit about what inspired you to write Salted.
Thank you very much for having me. Hello, everyone. So basically, I'm going to start straight into it. I was 10 years old, and I was a nightmare of a child. I got diagnosed with mild Tourette syndrome, depression, and I got basically put into a hospital. I was there for a year. I came out. I was like, what am I going to do now? And then I started washing dishes at my local restaurant. They gave me an opportunity. And then a year later, they offered me an apprenticeship to become a chef. So I was there for 3 years. I got my MBQ 1, 2, and 3, and my third was in pastry. And then from there, I moved on to one of Ramsay's restaurants in London. And then from there, I went to France, where I started to ski. I never skied before, never left the country. And then I won a gold medal in 2014. So,
Show off.
So basically what the book is about kind of never giving up. It's about men's mental health. I feel like it's not talked about as much as it needs to be. I've lost several friends in the last 2 years who were chefs. So I feel like vulnerability is such a strength and people need to talk about it. So the book showcases my favorite places I've been to with 50 recipes. Very easy to do, very simple. Very described simply. I summited Everest in 2017, so there's six recipes in there from like Tibet and Nepal, for example. I did the north side. So basically, it's just a journey, and it's just explaining that cooking saved my life because it did, you know. And that's what it's about the people that I've met in my life through all the challenges that I've faced. Like the people that I've met have helped me become the person I am today. So yeah, and that's what it does.
Thank you so much, Chef. And we'll get back to that aspect of mental health that you brought up a little bit later. I know one of the things that you were very interested in from traveling all over the world is sustainability, and I know that's something that's important to all of you on this panel. And so, you know, sustainability encompasses so many things, right? It's not just about protecting the environment. It's about food access and affordability, which we just talked about. It's about food justice and equity. And so, Adrian, if I can turn to you and ask you a little bit about to talk about the role of chefs in advocacy and being real champions for sustainability and justice.
So I think a little bit of my background kind of helps. Academically, I am an architect and a city planner. So I came from a different point of view, and the work that I did was I had this theory that restaurants could revitalize communities and can be part of the fabric of a community. And so I left my warm home of Texas and moved to Wisconsin to make this happen. And
silly woman.
yeah, very silly. I'm having flashbacks right now. But I ended up working with a community that embraced me as their first African American to have a brick and mortar in their area and as a restaurant. We ended up changing our block that was only 33% occupied with businesses to 100% within a year, mainly women businesses. And just economically, just to say around just the land being bought was just astronomical between single family homes and people moving back into the neighborhood just because of the perspective of what a restaurant was able to do. And so through that, the responsibility of a chef is so much more than putting food on your plate. And I tell people all the time, we are the last ones that handle your food, but we are also handling it the longest. We manipulate it, we make it taste good, we make you hate it, we make you like it. We even do the adapt of you liking things you never knew you were gonna like kale.
Right.
I like kale, you know, so these are aspects that we even control the market. But one thing that we usually don't get to do very much is come off the line. And the work that I was doing, I realized I had more to do off the line than on the line in the kitchen. And so my work ended up being working in advocacy was with farmers, and especially farmers with color. We had about 5 in Wisconsin that were identifying as Black. And during COVID, George Floyd was mentioned before. George Floyd was murdered 2 hours from the crow flies from where I was. And so my community was pretty impacted, and they looked at me for answers, which I didn't have any. All I could do was feed people. So in having conversations, it had broadened the idea that we need to look beyond what we are doing in the kitchen, but how do we work with our farmers? How do we work with our community? How do we just go beyond feeding and taking on the responsibility about sustainability and what we decide to bring in and who do we talk to? Because we see between, 500 to 1,000 people a day, strangers, and some that are repetitively coming in. We have such an important impact in the world, and especially within the hospitality we bring.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that was a long answer, but
I
That's a
only
great
expect
answer.
that from you. You did a great job. Round of applause for Adrian, please. Adrian, you bring up this important point that chefs have a responsibility. And I know you, Chef Eric, that you feel like you have a responsibility to really showcase sustainable blue foods or aquatic foods and make them accessible for folks, make people want to eat them, because often I feel like folks are scared of seafood for different reasons. But how do you sort of translate that sustainability part into making a delicious dish?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, I'm kind of new to this journey. I'm 10 years into it, but I feel like I'm new into this journey. There's so much going on there as far as best practices. So I'm a live fire chef. I travel the world and create incredible experiences. I think feeding people is extremely important, but when it comes to really lighting that fire, people surround it, storytelling takes place, understanding takes place. So to use that tool as kind of a platform of edutainment to get in there and discover these farms all around the world and create partnerships with people and really get in there and mix it up with communities. I fell in love with a farm in the Arctic Circle in Norway. In fact, I spent Christmas with them north of the Arctic Circle, Quarry Arctic salmon. You might have heard of them. Beautiful, beautiful third generation sustainable aquaculture farm north of the Arctic Circle, 90-person island. And just being able to be a chef and being able to identify who's doing something really unique, who's going to be able to feed the future with dwindling resources and growing population, you know, and to have that opportunity. And I think these chefs on the board here would agree. One of the things that we do that's so vitally important is choose who we spend our time with. And when they're protein partners or they're farmers or, you know, like chef to friends, you know, to be able to pinpoint and use our platform as a platform for them has just been a joy and a privilege and now a responsibility. So
It's a joy, a privilege, and a responsibility. And I think that's so important because we've been talking about relationships all day, that this relationship building that you have to do to keep those partnerships going and to find the really good protein providers and to find the really good farmers who are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and there's so many of them out there, right? And this is something that we're all going to have to deal with, right? When we hear the words, even just fish farm, and I'm focusing on fish here. I've also got a beef supplier, a pork supplier, a zucchini, a kale supplier. It's so nice to get outside of the four walls.
Right.
When we think of chef, there's all these TV shows about chefs and how tough it is. We put in a couple decades playing with fire and knives and getting cut and burnt, and you really realize it's about the people.
Yeah.
It becomes so. It's not even about the food at that point, right? You've become 3 times removed from actually putting food on the plate because you're constantly doing research and who's doing what. There's this beautiful trout coming out of Idaho. I've got to go check them out. There's Pacifico striped bass off the Baja coast. Let's go see what they're doing. And you have to see this because the way marketing is these days, there's just so much out there. We've all known about chicken for ages, right? Cage free. What does that really mean? And you get there, it's a nightmare, right?
Sure.
So proof's in the pudding, I reckon. You got to get out there. You got to see it. And I love chefs getting out there and mixing it up within their own communities especially, but also globally.
Yeah, see it, touch it, smell it, then cook it, right?
You got it.
I want to go back to what Chef Dave was able to bring up. I think the pandemic, for a lot of us who didn't know before, really put a spotlight on the important role of restaurants. Adrian mentioned that earlier, like how central they are to our communities and our neighborhoods. But I think the pandemic also highlighted the really toxic environment that can exist in restaurant and hospitality. And I am so excited that Chef Dave and so many others are talking about the sort of mental health toll that working in hospitality, especially as a chef, can take on all of you. And how do we change the environments within kitchens to make them less about that? I mentioned the phrase toxic masculinity earlier, but I think it is certainly toxic masculinity. How do we change that? And maybe Dave, I start with you.
I think it is changing. There's so many incredible female head chefs out there now, which is awesome to see, super talented. So it is changing. It's not as bad as it used to be. When I was coming into it, it was kind of coming out of that scene. But imagine working an 18-hour shift and then you're like, oh, it's over. It's like, what am I going to do now? You're chucking pans around the kitchen and you're going through 100 service checks. It's so many highs and lows. So that's what we need to kind of figure out. How do we change that? Because what we do is we go out and go sink 10 pints, right? Which obviously isn't good for anyone, which leads to bad problems.
Sure.
So if you were able to talk about it and be more vocal and be more vulnerable, then like we started saying to Eric yesterday, it's like being in the kitchen, it's like these big pirates with big knives and drinking big glasses of beer. That's how we see it. But we need to try and change that because it is an art and it's a passion and it does. Like I said, it saved me, and so it's just. I think we just need to talk about it. We need to be more open.
Yeah, we need to absolutely be more open about this. Adrian, I know this is something that concerns you.
Yeah, as an owner and a chef, it hits a little different because you have this responsibility, not just to yourself, but to your whole staff and what we call our family, right, in our back of house. And COVID and the Me Too movement really did push this topic a little bit forward, especially with a lot of chefs we had a lot of allegations that were coming out, and people were willing to talk about it because before you kind of just sucked it up and you kind of moved on. But you have to think about, if you haven't worked in a kitchen, it doesn't start at 8 a.m. or when the door opens. It starts 5, 6, 10 hours before, 4 a.m. for bakers, just dependent. And it doesn't end when they close their door at 10 o'clock. We're there 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we got to do this all over again. Myth, I'm going to dismantle that a little bit. We eat a lot of PBJs and cereal, just to let you know, we do, because we don't want to cook anymore and not for ourselves. And so, I really push the self-care as a huge advocate for oneself, and to talk. My kitchen was very open because everybody has a life before they walk through my doors. Everybody has had their own issues. They could have gotten in a car accident. They could have broke up with their girlfriend or boyfriend. And they have to come in and they have to be hospitable and they have to smile. And they have to, before they would tell them, shove it all in, leave it outside the door, but you don't. And for me, it's having these open conversations. And, to the point, for example, we changed the hours of our operation because guess what? I was never home to eat dinner with my own kids. And I was noticing some of my other people weren't either. So I said, we're changing hours. We're gonna cut dinner. And everybody was like, what? And my community was like, what? I was like, but I wanna go home and eat too, and I wanna see my children. And so we focus heavily more on our brunch and our lunch and our breakfast and our cafe, which we ended up making more money than we were with having dinners in that hours that we were doing. And plus, we wanted people to be able to go home and pick up their kid, you know, and go to a play and go to a movie. So I think we sometimes forget that we are people, we're not machines, and that we need time to breathe, we need to have vacation, we need to demand vacation on top of that.
Yeah.
But also just self-care it out.
Yeah.
And for my team was yoga. We had a yoga studio next by and a spin. So they had open access to go at any time. If they're like, I need a yoga.
And you
I'm like,
lift
"Peace."
weights.
And if you follow me on Instagram, I am a power lifter. So I lift a lot of weights.
She's amazing. I love Chef Adrian so much. Thank you for sharing all that. That self-care is so important, especially when we're talking about this edutainment that you've described, Chef Eric. And I wonder how you take care of yourselves traveling the world. I know you do with your kids and your partner, but you also have to think about, you know, what nourishes you.
Yeah, I think you know, I grew up in the restaurant industry, and it was not what I would want my children to go through. I wouldn't change a single thing of the experiences that I had, but I mean, it was physically abusive, it was mentally abusive, it was verbally abusive, and I think growing up in that culture and understanding what that is and what that can do to a person, I mean, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't go through that personally, but there's no place for it anymore in the industry.
Yeah.
And so for me, I get great joy and solace in just knowing that I'm creating a culture of significance for people. So you train a dog, but you develop a person. And so to really get in there and like I've got a chef symposium coming up in Atlanta in a couple of weeks, and it's just people that I've seen come up in the industry that I'm super stoked that I can bring along on this journey.
Right.
Like, who doesn't want to jet set around a little bit and learn how to cook food in a restaurant or at your home and then throw it in a Yeti and put it on the plane and show up and you're ready to rock and roll. You know, here we are in Park City, right? It was just CES in Las Vegas last week, and it'll be Charlotte, North Carolina next. You know, so it's go, 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 which is no different if you're in four walls or if you're an owner. You never turn it off. You know, you know the dishwasher's having some drug problems. You know that you don't have enough saute pans to do a busy Friday night. You need new chairs. Like, you never mentally turn it off.
Right.
It's the people and the individual characteristics of everybody that you come across that work with you, for you, with you, that can really, really help you out. You know, of course, eating is a great thing to do. Not boozing it up. I'm still working on those two things. You know.
All of us are.
Yeah. Works in progress. You know, but I can remember. You know, I tell people that when you get to a point, you're going to work so that you can be a superstar in your community and make the changes that you want to make, right? Because every great event needs food. So if you want to get into a great party, put a chef coat on, find the dumpster in the back, put a sheet tray on, and walk in the back door. You're in. You know, we're going to be there, you know. But for Chef Dave and I met in Ukraine, actually, working with World Central Kitchen. And, you know, for me, I was there because I was watching the news and I felt completely helpless.
Right.
I didn't know what to do with the conflict. It just started. And all of a sudden, we're making 14,000 meals a day. David just come off of Bravo TV Below Deck shooting. It hadn't been released yet. I just hear this woodpecker just, you know, and I tell people the story, like, it's like somebody's got knife skills. We got to find this guy, put him to work online. And that's how Chef Dave and I met. But being able to help others with the skill set that you've built through pain, tears, struggle, that's where it starts to get back. It's an investment of 2 decades and constantly giving away every single thing that you've learned, you know.
So important.
And these chefs are just so generous in their own communities. Like, it's a privilege to be sitting next to y'all. That I think that's it, really. Growing people, developing people, and trying to make yourself absolutely useless in your own place. Once you do that, you can grow into something else.
I love it. I love it so much. I have to say that these 3 chefs have been incredibly generous of their time and of other things to Food Tank. So thank you so much. It means so much to me.
Cheers.
Your friendship
Thank you, guys.
and your ability to come when I ask you.
I'm going to have y'all do a round of applause for Dani, because every time I come to a panel, she's beyond prepared with her Trapper Keeper.
I love my
like
Trapper
her
Keeper.
little Trapper Keeper. She's fully prepared. So thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, Dave.
Buy Chef
Dave.
Dave's book, Salted, please. Or sign up to become a Food Tank member, and you'll get one for free, and it's signed. All right. Kenzie, our events coordinator, can I have another glass of water? Give Kenzie a round of applause. She has made this event possible. We could not have done it without her. She's an extraordinary human being that I have the privilege of working with almost every day.